All right, the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100. Now, today's video is not going to be too long. We're going to get straight to the point. We're going to talk about a few things specifically, though. And the first thing I do want to talk about is what are the expectations with CPI reading. JP Morgan released some probabilities and the overall outcomes if these do come out. Now, starting at the higher prints towards the lower. Now, before I go into this information, I want to go over and cover some of this stuff in here also. If you look right now, the forecast is 7.3. Our previous was a 7.7. Now, when we look at the previous on PPI, you did miss the forecast, but you still dropped 0.6% towards the downside, so it was still halfway decent. And we also know that we move more based on CPI. So if we still get the 6% or 0.6% to the downside, we'd be roughly at 7.1. But let's look a little bit deeper here. They said if we come at 6.9% or lower from the CPI reading, we move up on the S&P specifically around 8 to 10%. Now, a 7 to 7.2, which is more in favor of some of these numbers we're looking at, 4 to 5% upside. And if we come out near the projected numbers, it's 2 to 3% of upside. So anything close to projected is upside. And if we look total, it's about a 70% chance that we get that upside potential. Now, the least likely is that CPI rises. So this is important to realize and looking at the overall spending happening right now. Now, again, I've been talking about specifically what I've been looking at on this market. And going into this, I've done very minimal trading. I cut my Amazon trades near 20% today, and I was just done with the market after that. I had no intentions on following through and just over trading any of this movement. But to my surprise, we started getting a lot of buying here near the end of the day, specifically near the hour before power hour. So you started getting this buying, power hour hits here, and then boom, you start to shoot up. A lot of buyers start to storm the market. Very quickly after this starts to get released from JP Morgan. Coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. It's worth mentioning. So again, I'm pretty liquid. Now, I do want to talk about a few things specifically going on here. Now, if we look here at what's happening with the ES and what's happening with the market, we need to talk about a few specifics. Now, with ES, what's happening? Where are you bouncing at continuously? You're bouncing right down here at support. Last night, you came right back down to this demand, the 39.20 range, and guess what happened? You bounced again. This has been the same area, and you've been sitting really in this range with highs around 40.50, but we've really, the top of that range was that next supply levels that is at 4,100. And I do anticipate if CPI comes out pretty beneficial or somewhat close to good in the ranges we just went over, you're going to hit that 4,100 level in a hurry, specifically on ES futures. Now, is this a video about me being bullish? No, it's about me giving you the guidelines of where we're going to go if certain numbers print, if we get bullish data. I also want to say, you're going to see a follow through on bullish movement, in my opinion. So let's say hypothetically you come out tomorrow and you get a good print. Well, I also see the momentum shifting straight into going into the Fed meeting. So it's going to be continuation. Now, about the downside, I think if you get immediate downside tomorrow and the CPI print comes out bad, then I do think you're just going to get, some stagnation throughout the day until the Fed meeting. That's my personal opinion and what I am looking at. But before we go any further, I have to ask you to consider doing two things: liking and subscribing. Every single day I'm making videos for you, so you are prepared with this market. On top of that, the Discord link is down below if you're interested in seeing what we're doing all day throughout the day. This is not just a signals channel to where you get buys and exits, right? This is for education and everything in between, so you can pick our brains throughout the day. We have the watch list. We have everything in between, so you are ready to trade. We have a bot in here that shows all of our charts also, so you can get key levels even if we're dead asleep. You always stay prepared. And if you're also not following on Twitter, I recommend doing so you can get all these updates every single day throughout the day, no matter what time it is. So you can see trades I'm getting into and trades I'm getting out of, also absolutely free. All the information is down below. Let's get back to it. Now, as we jump back in here, I do want to highlight just where we're at in this range. Now, specifically, if you're looking at futures, Nasdaq still has a lot of weakness. You're still, dangerously close down here, right? But you're definitely fluctuating back and forth. Now, I think what you have to see, if you want to see the market continue moving up just beyond tomorrow, you got to see strength in tech, right? You have to see that strength, because the reason why we're not getting continuation is because tech keeps getting rejected at these major levels. We had a double top roughly at 12.1, and then we came back down, but we're holding this 11.4 area. So again, I think there's potential for major downside, but I'm going to say right now, based on the information we went over, based on JP Morgan's post here, there's a lot of reason for us to go up. And I do believe the CPI comes around 7.2, 7.4%. going into that Fed meeting, you're just going to see the overall same stance from the Fed that we saw basically last month and from Powell last time. My personal opinion in the short term. Now, the short term and the long term are two separate and very different things. Now, if you watched my video yesterday, I went over my major concerns on the overall economy. And I recommend watching that video if you want to get a better viewpoint. I also do want to mention something that's happening with VIX because I know there's going to be a lot of questions today. You had a nice gap up this morning and continuation on VIX. Now, does VIX show you when the market's going down? Hypothetically, it can, but it's not necessarily used that way alone. Now, we came down to our key area and he had a big bounce and we saw a rejection from 12.1 and we pushed all the way back down to 11.4 on Nasdaq. In consideration, we had some downside movement. But I do want to say, what VIX primarily does is price in the derivatives of the market. So you need to understand what you're looking at and ultimately what you're expecting from this. I think it's interesting that VIX popped up today, but I do want to say it isn't necessarily a key sign that you have to drop tomorrow. If we're looking a little bit further, also, some of the big data pulls that we've been watching has been the yields. Looking at what's happening specifically here. You're still inverted, the 10 versus 30, and you're still dangerously high. These are concerns. And this is why specifically with myself, I'm just sitting on the sidelines until the data comes out. I understand I could probably, strangle, do some different strategies like that, but that's not my bread and butter. My bread and butter is waiting for the market, getting the reaction, and then trading based on the reaction and following the trend. Because why? The trend is our friend. And it's not just one of our friends. It's our best friend when it comes to trading with price action and supply and demand, right? Your answers are always going to be there. That's why I'm so clear about showing you the demand and supply levels here so you're always ready. So going into tomorrow, 11.8 is going to be a big level. If we can get above this and we get a good CPI print, I see Nasdaq pushing towards basically 12.1. ES, if you can get here, you have like a little bit of a supply level here around 40.10. Over that, I think 4,100 would be coming in a hurry. You have a little bit of levels at 40.40, 40.50. But again, I think it's just going to be like an uphill, just straight battle once CPI prints, if it's very good. Now, I do want to talk about some potential stock plays. I didn't want to spend this whole video going over futures because, again, it's a lot of hypotheticals, and we just don't know what's going to happen with that print, although you would have to expect it comes out halfway decent or similar to what it did with PPI, at least 0.5% towards the downside. That's just my overall opinion right now. You came in at 7.7, even with a 0.5 beat, you come in at 7.2%, which would still be very good for the economy. Now, a few of my favorite stocks, I'm going to tell you right now. So I like a lot of beat up stocks that are being very held down based on inflationary information. One, I love Costco. I think Costco has potential. They just had earnings. Earnings weren't that great, but I do want to say I think they've been very beat up. I think Costco has room back towards the upside. Few areas that I'm liking specifically for myself. Now, this is not a daily gap, so you know. And so if you look at this is basically just on a 2-hour time frame. So if I go to the daily chart, you would not see a gap there. But I want to highlight, I think this is a very big level, a very critical level. Back up to 502, 505. A good CAPI print could easily get this back above this range. If it gets above 505, I'd be even targeting closer towards the 523 range personally, and then pushing even further. I think Costco has a lot of upside. I think it's very beat up. Going a little bit further, I want to mention Caterpillar. And I know you're going to see me mention a lot of boomer names today, so bear with me. I know I usually love tech, but today it's all about boomers for me. I like these safe names towards the upside. You have a bit of a flag going on here. It's a little bit ugly, I do want to say that, but it's a lot of consolidation with decreasing volume. But what really has my interest is going towards the daily time frame. And as we look here, we're basically consolidating at these highs with lower volume also on the daily time frame, basically for a whole month near these levels. Today we saw a lot of upside volume kicking in. Very interesting behavior. If CPI comes out good, I do anticipate construction costs are still pretty low. That would be very good for CAT and could get this momentum up to new all-time highs, or at least testing the 246 level. You're very close to that level. It's worth mentioning. Next one up is going to be Roblox. And again, this is something that I very, very regularly will mention. If we look at what's happening here, you can go to something like the 4-hour and really see that you were kind of in this little descending wedge, if you will. You kind of had a little bit of a wedge going on here. I want to highlight that, right? Just give you a little bit of a visual. You're kind of trying to break out right now. If we look at what's happening, and again, it's not necessarily the most beautiful wedge, so I do want to say that I think a lot of people are forcing stuff happening here now, and they're just trying to find setups. So I do want to highlight that, but it's getting a nice little breakup, at least making a little bit of a higher high potentially in the shorter term time frame. So that's what I do want to highlight here. So I do like that. If Roblox can get above locally 34, I think you could easily start pushing towards 37, 38. This would be my next target up here. But again, it's going to be highly dependent. And I don't like to mention a lot of the mid caps. It's not a small cap Roblox, but I definitely think it's a little bit riskier of a play. And so I'm very careful when I mention these. It was just one of those plays I saw on the charts. Next up and last is going to be Amazon for myself. I want to highlight a few things here. You've been making lower lows across the board, and today you finally made a higher low. If we look at the 4 hour, we're coming down to that test. This is when we get up 20%, end up cutting that play. And if you don't believe me, we can come in here and look really quick. Going into Tyler's zone, we can see right here, Amazon 3.45, do what you got to do. 3.6, do not be greedy in a CPI. Amazon contracts are still at 3.2, but that was even with the upside push there. So I was just highlighting, giving updates there. But looking now, I like where you're at. And I think there's definitely potential here. If CPI print comes out well, I think you have almost upside back to that 102, 100 region up here. I think you could easily start seeing shorts start to cover their position. Giving you a for instance, remember Meta. When you broke out of this, shorts started covering positions and you pushed all the way back to 122, 123. Giving you another instance on NVIDIA. When you broke out of this, you broke this little descending triangle you kind of had and you ended up pushing back up. What happened? You broke above 162, and like I said in Discord, and I mentioned it here also, short started to cover, and you pushed all the way back up to the 200 moving average on the daily. So I want to highlight where you're at and the potential behind some of these plays. Very interesting behavior. But the beautiful thing about what's happening with CPI is I don't believe you have to be in the play tonight. I think you're going to get continuation if the data prints good. If the data doesn't print good, that's exactly why I'm sitting on the sideline right now, not taking that risk. I can be patient and wait for that Fed meeting to get the confirmation that I want. Because if data doesn't come out good, I think you still have to wait for that Fed meeting just to secure yourself and be patient from a day trader's perspective, right? Because I go over swings and I go over the day trades. Right now, there's not really a swing opportunity. But if CPI prints really good, we're going to have those swing trade opportunities. Like I always say, be patient, because when you're patient, that's when you set yourself up to make the most amount of money in this market. And hopefully you guys are learning a thing or two from this channel also. If you have questions, please comment down below. I'll see you tomorrow.